Okay, so now that we've finished organizing all the notes that we took and putting our sources of information in alphabetical order, we need to stop and evaluate if we met our research goals before we move on to a rough draft. Because if we didn't meet our goals, we might have to go back and do more research. So we have to go back and look at what our goals were and then what we actually did. So our note-fact goal was 10, our glossary entries were 2, our required resources were 2, and they were all internet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in this top part of this form, right? So when I counted up all my note facts that I have glued on my sources page, my categories page, I actually have 43. So I'm way over the 10 that I needed, right? I'm sure you don't have 43. You certainly don't need 43. But hopefully you're over 10. Maybe you have 12 or 15 or maybe even 20, right? That would be great, right? As long as you have 7 or 8, I would say you can move on. If you have less than that, you probably need to make up some work and get a little bit more research done before you can move on to your rough draft. A required number of glossary entries was 2. I had 4, so I met that one. So we have check, check. Number of resources, I had 4, right? I only needed 2, and they were all internet. So for every source that I had, I'm just going to check the little box saying, yep, I have that internet source. Yep, I have that internet source. Yes, I have this internet source. From there, I'm going to look down, right? I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to come up with the 3 most important findings about my defendant, okay, the person we're putting on trial. So for me, that was Admiral Pliny. So the fact that he's a scholar, that was like really kind of central to his character, right? That he was curious, that he was a scientist, he had to learn about things, which has positives and it has negatives, right? And so if I'm the defense, I'm going to argue that this man was a scholar, he knew all about volcanoes, no one knew about Vesuvius, it was a surprise, no one could have anticipated. If I'm the prosecution, I would argue that, he really should have known better. He, shouldn't have had dinner and went to bed. He should have rescued everybody and let them go, right? Escape with them. So that goes both ways for the defense and the prosecution. So it doesn't really matter which side you're on. A central characteristic of the defendant is important, and anything like that you should write down as one of your key findings. The type of person they were. Then another key finding was that he was concerned about the residents of Pompeii and Herculaneum. He did try to rescue them. And that he died as a result of his efforts. That people considered him a hero for having tried. Again, this could be both a positive and a negative. Not everyone would consider him a hero. You could certainly make an argument, even as a prosecution, that while some people may have thought that, it wasn't really true. So both sides, again, it doesn't really matter which side you're on. These kind of key findings are relevant to both sides. You're just going to take a different point of view about the facts. Your key glossary word, you only have to do one here. Pick one of your glossary words, the one you think you might use, the one that you think is going to be important in the trial, right? You might actually put into testimony, or the lawyers might actually use, right? So I chose asphyxiation, because that's not only how he died, but it would be how the people who were there died, right? Suffocation, but asphyxiation is the more scientific term. So using that, right, makes you sound more believable, credible. All of those things are positive in a trial. Future IIM goals is the last thing you have to think about. So you want to fill in 1 or 2 future goals. So now that you've gone through this process, what would you want to do better next time or improve upon, right? And so it does have possible goals down here. I would say some of the things you can think about, from my experience of watching students go through this process, is did you really focus on the research questions, or did you end up writing down a bunch of stuff that wasn't important, right? How many note facts did you have left over at the end that didn't belong in a category? If you only had a couple, then this is not a goal for you. You did great. But if you have a significant number, 5, 6, 7 more questions that, note facts that don't fit into a category, then maybe this is a research goal for you next time, right? To be more focused on just the information that you need. Some of you, have very long note facts and they basically are exactly out of the websites, right? That you didn't really put them in your own words, or they're too long. So you have too many facts on a strip. You really only want one fact per strip, which means that when you're reading through, you have to pull the sentence apart and pull all the different facts and put them on different strips, as opposed to one long sentence on a strip. So maybe that's something that you can improve upon next time. I saw a lot of that going on. Once you've organized your notes, if you were one of those students who was going, I don't know which category to put it in, it's because you had too much information on a strip, right? So maybe that's where you can improve next time. That gives you more note facts. That's not a bad thing, right? So instead of pulling it all on one, separate it out. And instead of one note fact strip, you have 5, right? Makes it easier to organize and better focus. So once you're done with this, we're going to go ahead and go on to our rough draft. Round 1 of the rough draft.